Hi, welcome to the Wonderment Book Club. This week we are here discussing other books that have had some influence on our journey of self-mastery, self-discovery, healing, whatever it takes. A lot of times books really do help us out. And the highlighted book we're discussing this week is called Untamed by Glennon Doyle. Untamed, Stop Pleasing and Start Living. Thank you so much for joining us. We're here this week with a few beautiful Wonderment faces. Say hello, Rizzy in the house.
Hi, girl. What's poppin'?
And we also have Miss Neo. How are you, Neo?
Very good. Very much looking forward to talking about this wonderful book. I've read some of it.
And then we have the beautiful Sonia, who many of you know from the Woods and all of our other events. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I've got my book of notes ready. I've listened to half the book.
I'm going to go get my book.
Well, and what's the big thing that I really must stress with our Wonderment Book Club? So we always have a highlighted book and we throw it into the mix. We'll be joining again next month. And because it's our first session together, obviously we got a book that a few of us have been talking about a lot lately because it has a lot of resonance of where we are at right now. And the key thing to know about this book club is, as we grow, we will always just profess that it's all about coming together, connecting to discuss a book, whether you've read the back page of it, the York notes of it, whether you've indulged and read it all the way through, or even twice, or even halfway through, or even want to know about the book. We'll also be talking after we've been discussing Untamed, all about other books that have maybe inspired us and helped us on this journey that we're on. Especially this year, books have really helped us this year, kind of like in our solitary, confinement, or lockdown, or whatever you want to call it. But it's really helped a lot of us, to understand, learn, grow. And what's interesting is, I found myself, I have a lot of books on my shelf, that I maybe have bought or been inspired to buy, or someone's inspired me to buy or to read, and I'll just not resonate with them, or it might not be the right time. What's great about this time when we're all, in our own homes, it really is no other better time to grab those books off the shelf. And so that's why we started book club, so we can really get together and inspire each other to read. And, it doesn't matter if we've not read the whole thing. It doesn't matter if we didn't like the book. We're here to discuss the themes that may have come up because of reading said book. And then afterwards, we'll also be chipping in with other books that might have inspired. So anybody who's watching this after this Zoom meeting can actually, maybe get some inspiration of other books to read. I really just want to start by, saying, as I was talking to the guys earlier, I just think what's great about this book is it feels like really now. I think we all know that we're coming into a real age and time of truth, where truth really is the only way to go. And a lot of us haven't been very good at being truthful, or hiding things that we might have been not wanting to conceal or to disclose, because we felt it's not the thing to do, i.e. we've all been tamed to be a certain way. And there are some people in this group, or in fact, all but Sonia, who are, I think I can declare for them, gay men. We identified very much so with Glennon and her writing. But what was great about her writing, when I first read it, I was like, oh, this is like a woman's book for a woman. That's all about, women, and actually it was so, after 3 pages, we realized that this is a book about anybody who feels that they have been caged or tamed or not allowed to find their true essence of who they are, to actually to be exactly that. And what was so amazing about what was so amazing about this book was simply that, sorry, Stephen's making me laugh. What was so amazing about that book, it allowed us to remember that we've lived this narrative of actually, you know what, even though we've fought it and even though we've pushed against it, we have pushed out of the cage of the untamed way, of the way that a lot of people are living. And it was so celebratory of Glennon to be writing about this. The book starts off where, you know, it's actually, she's taking her young daughter to the zoo, and, you know, she sees this whole like cheetah that's basically let out of the cage to charge across the court in front of all this clapping crowd in order to chase this pink fluffy bunny. Now, the thing is about that, it's entertainment for the crowd and everybody claps and cheers, but Glennon's daughter starts asking questions, as Glennon does, which is this cheetah tamed to do these tricks? Does it remember its wild roots? And, you know, is that like where we are as a human race? Things that we really don't want to pursue and live our truth at. We're simply just, you know, a caged, tamed animal. And when we do unleash, you know, where are we at? And then, of course, what's great about the book is, you know, what's great about because I did do the audiobook and a bit of reading. And when you have Glennon's voice in there, you can hear her. And it must be really great for, and I would recommend the audiobook. It must be great for an author to be able to do their audiobook, because you can say it how it was intended to be written. And she really does keep a really neutral sort of oration. However, you can really feel the passion in the words that she's written from the heart. What would you say, Neil? How have you got on with the book?
I really loved it. I've gotten halfway through. I think so many of the themes spoke to me, and it was really interesting to read something that's, I think it's aimed at such an interesting audience, because I think some of these themes which I'm exploring in my own work and so many other books I've read, that come in at a much, if you like, more intense angle, that I think it's done a really good job of reaching a really broad audience. It's got Adele's written on the back. I don't know what her general appetite is for this work, but I think...
Well, this is what, I mean, it's a good thing you said that. She actually came forward and saying that Glennon saved her. Now, we've all read books, and we'll come to other books that we've read, where certain authors and certain people have completely saved us, or really like kickstarted our journey. And it's really interesting to see that, yeah, like you say, Adele was inspired by Glennon.
The Adele?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Adele was saved by Glennon.
Hello. Hello.
Might be a different Adele. I don't know. Could be.
No, it is Adele.
Adele is a bit untamed, though. She is a little bit.
No, but I think this is what's great. This is what I'm saying. This is what's great about this book. Like, anyone that feels untamed and feels like they're doing too much or they're not being themselves, this book is almost like validation. It's like, yeah, actually, we're just living our truth and living our true wild selves rather than being caged. And that's, I think, where Adele was, because she always was quite wild.
Yeah. Have you ever seen the carpool karaoke with James Corden? And he puts on his brakes, and then she spills the coffee over himself. And then he says to her, "Oh, I'll hold your coffee." She goes, "It's all right, babes, I'll down it." And then she downs the whole cup of coffee.
Yeah.
That is Untamed.
That is Untamed.
That's what the book's about,
yeah.
Actually. No, it's not.
But
I thought the book was brilliant at kind of bridging that gap often for very everyday, ordinary conversation and that anecdotal dimension to actually hitting some really raw, beautiful, spiritually resonant pieces. I didn't know if it was going to be a bit of a fluff piece when I started it. I love the intro with the analogy with the cheetah and the bunny and everything. I thought, oh my God, that's great. And then as I started a couple of chapters, I thought, oh, is this going to be, I don't know, just a bit too fluffy? And it wasn't. I've really marked quite a few parts of it. I think she does such a great job. I mean, she refers to it as knowing in the book, but that sense of a deeper intelligence, more so than the ego's intelligence. And she does such a good job of kind of highlighting that in a way that's actually quite refreshing, that isn't overly sophisticated or complicated. It's very, really earthy and grounded.
I mean, what I loved, I mean, the very freedom of like, and the way she wrote it, the way she kind of drip fed the story enough that you knew exactly where she was going. But I found it was a very different style of writing. It was almost like vignettes. It was almost like vignettes, and it was time hopping, but you were totally with her. It was totally, I mean, I read somewhere that she, you know, it was a very different way of writing, and it was very difficult for her to actually sell it to her publishers. And they're all like, this is just all over, it's not really a novel, it's vignettes, it's stories, but I get it. She had to really sell it because, you know, she was living her truth. She was living her wild self. What did you think, Sonia? How did you get on with the book? Oh, sorry. Unmute.
I think it's really easy to listen to, and I like the expression in her voice, like that. There's certain books and certain authors where it's easier to listen to the actual author reading it, like Eckhart Tolle and Russell Brand, like, because you hear their expression. So this was the same for this one. My friend had a paper copy and I looked at it and it wasn't like as enjoyable as listening to her. And yeah, I like the short little chapters and short little bits, so you can just do, like, I go into it and I'm like, okay, I've got 5 minutes, let me just listen to this one quickly. And in terms of what Neo was just saying about the knowing, I liked how she said, like, the knowing is either yourself or God or source or intuition or whatever you want it to be. And as much as, like, I know I need to meditate, I still find myself not doing it. And this reminded me and made me actually really, like, want to do it, because there was a bit where she said, you can find a place that you don't even, like, you just don't even know exists, and it's a different level, and you need to, like, sink to go back and find it so you can rise back. I like that. And to go below the voices, and the voices could be a fear or expectation or all our conditioning.
Yeah. Amazing. No, I mean, like I said, it was what I kind of really liked the fact that, you know, in the beginning you thought, I mean, she is a feminist, she claims such. And, you know, as much as everything in the last 2 or 3 years, everything's got bad press. So you don't know what side of the fence to sit. You know, are you going to go with this or not? And she almost opens the debate up by saying, you know, I am celebrating what it is to be a wild, raw, true woman who lives her truth, but I'm also not paving out the way for straight men or any other denomination. There's that amazing, the whole analogy of, like, you know, her, you know, she's got a son and daughter, or is it 2 daughters and a son? You know, that the son basically is, you know, he is drip fed all of this masculinity, and there's like shower gel that is like, you know, smell great and just kick dirt into the grime, and then you got all the shower gels that are, you know, the girls' shower gels, which is all like, you know, essence and divinity and all of this. And it is really true. Like, you know, we don't realize how much, you know, when we're younger, that we're shown the goalposts of what to be and what to think and what to love and what to fancy, you know. And it's a real, you know, it's a really defining moment when someone can put it into a book so clearly that it's like, oh my God, of course, this is nonsense. Because, I mean, how do you think, Rizzy, like, when it comes to, like, being brought up in a world where we know is slightly different, don't we, dolls?
Slightly, darling.
But no, I mean, you know, did you ever get to that point? But it's interesting that they say, you know, when you get to the age of 10 years old, is the age where you start to see, like, you know, becoming Rizzy. It should be a book. But did you have a moment when you were
started
10,
writing.
like she did, where she was literally, you know, confused at who she was and wanted to, you know, pigeonhole and cage who she was?
You're asking me if I had a similar moment?
Yeah.
I actually did. When I was 11 in year 6, so a year older than her, I was in, it's a bit of a funny story, but it's quite a big moment in my life. I was in Marks and Spencer's with my nan, and I was buying pants for my dad or someone, and we were in the pants section, and on the poster on the wall there was a man in his underwear, and I didn't think to myself at the time, oh, I think I'm gay, because at that time in my life I didn't even know what being gay was. All I thought to myself was, I think I might like guys. And that night I went home and had a bubble bath, and while I was sitting in my bath I called my mum into the toilet and I said to her, I think I like guys. And then I didn't come out until many years later, but I had that sort of epiphany and awareness first time when I was 11, and that started the train of curiosity that eventually led to me being what you call a gay man.
Oh, and claps to that. So, is there any other identifying parts to the story, Nia? I know that one thing I loved about how she sort of realised about how, I mean, what was interesting about the situation was that, you know, she wrote a lot of books about the saviour of her marriage to her first husband and with her children, and she was trying to resolve it and save it. And she became a famous author and you know, someone who was talking a lot about how she was saving her marriage. And then when her husband told her that she was actually, he was actually having affairs, the first thing that came to her wasn't that, you know, she was, you know, upset about what he'd done or betrayed. It was about the fact that the story that she was writing in the current book simply was a phony, was a fake. And she felt let down by that. And then she led her true life. And, you know, then she met Abby, who became her beautiful, amazing, loving soul partner, soul wife, and made a great, amazing family with her beautiful 3 children. There's a lot of that goes on, doesn't there, in life, where people just suddenly realize their true self, true potential. And then when they close that door, something more magical opens.
What was the question, darling? Do
you identify with that story?
The lesbian part, definitely, yeah. I think it's really interesting because I know I hadn't heard of her actually before this, and I'm a big Oprah fan. And so I know that she'd made that circuit from those 2 books. And obviously from what she describes of them, they sound very powerful, from her journey through addiction, through to stability and creating a family out of despair. So I can imagine there was a huge audience for it. But like you say, it was really bold of her to unravel that identity that she'd done so well with, and to reveal, like she reveals that she cheated in high school to become one of the elite on this voting kind of for prom. They had the 10 golden circle kids that every year voted the same. And one year she got close to actually winning it. And so she cheated, and her wife said to her, "You sure you want to put that in the book?" So there was an element where she's definitely sharing everything about her troubles and her insecurities. And I thought at one point, is this slightly being milked? But actually I think it's really sincere. But I really respect the fact that she's kind of the patron saint of truth.
Yeah.
And that she's really she's using it to ground, I think, some much deeper points than just that slightly more warts and all biographical dimension to it, which is interesting because it's very sincere, and there's some really beautiful bits, like when she meets her wife for the first time as this straight identified Christian woman who has an identity around that and a following from that, and then she allows herself to feel the desire, and it's beautifully written. So I'm really enjoying it from that level. But then she really packs these punches, doesn't she? Where you really feel she's sincere with the wildness, the radicalness of what it means, especially as a woman, to not be given that space to put what I think many of us as men, I mean, we're a bunch of interesting men here, and Sonia, obviously.
Sonia is a gay man.
In a woman's body. But no, as men, we have been conditioned to imagine it is quite normal for us to assert that. So even though to varying degrees, us as men, we have been tamed to discount a voice that isn't the standard self-negation, it's not like we're encouraged to step into our hearts. So it's just we're encouraged a very different kind of egoic voice. So I love the fact that she's encouraging this deeper heart connection rather than simply saying you want another piece of the same egoic pie that the men are eating. And it seems like she really steers that path very acutely, that this isn't selfishness in the egoic sense of trading group ego for personal ego. She talks about it in terms of knowing. I would call it heart. But I think she does such a good job of steering towards the much more radical notion that your own truth is in fact a lighthouse for other people, especially when she talks about it with her kids. The idea of breaking up the home. She knew it was going to cause heartbreak for the kids when she was going to divorce the husband and start a lesbian relationship. But she said she owed it to them. And it sounded very convincing. It didn't just sound like she was trying to justify her needs. She knew that she had to model this for her kids, that she had to model for them that truth was the path, even if it made other people uncomfortable. And I trusted that her truth wasn't just her selfish desire. She does a really good job of making the case for the heart's truth, or what she would call knowing.
Amazing. I mean, you said two things there which were amazing. Like you reminded me of like the whole lineage of her having this one arm wanting to sort of protect the children and carry on the beautiful life with the husband and the family, and the other like owing it to what appears to be a very switched on, awake, indigo, crystal, rainbow child of hers. She owes it to them not to almost, A, not to show them how to sort of live in the wrong way, i.e. tame them in the wrong way, but B, also, you know, if she isn't happy and her woes and worries are hidden under motherhood, if children grow up knowing that, they do have a sense of like responsibility. And I feel that with my parents. I feel that anything that, a lot of the arguments that my parents had as the children were about us, you know, about like, oh, my dad was giving us too much. My dad wasn't giving us enough love. My mum was giving us too much. My dad was too strict. My mum was too this. And they stayed together for years. Like we actually had family councils where we would meet and we would discuss, should we stay together or should we divorce? And we would all be like, well, no. If you give a question like that to a child, of course the children are going to go, no, please don't get divorced. And actually, it's very responsible parents to sort of recognize that it's not working, and it's also not, you know, a good message to the children, whether they're boy children or girl children, to grow up seeing either a father disrespect the mother or the mother disrespect the father. So then what you get is children growing up seeing, you know, if you're a young girl seeing, you know, your mom being downtrodden, you're just going to learn that, and vice versa, vice versa. And I think the bravery that she took by just breaking that cycle, and isn't all of our lives about breaking cycles, is really inspirational and very identifiable. Even though she's talking about her story, I felt like it was my story. And the other thing, like what was so funny about the whole the vote rigging thing, it was so beautifully written, because it was like, oh my God, you were there with her. You were like, it was, and a lot of the whole book was written like this. It was like, you know, you were going down a garden path that you realized it was so nice, and then she would just sort of drop in the truth of the situation. You're like, oh my God. And it reminded me of many times that I've told a beautiful story and then forgot to tell the bit that wasn't true, which was probably the whole story, or certainly the glory of the story. And what was so interesting when I read that was like, oh my God, like, should I be going back through some of my incidents that I know I've either embellished or either changed history, as everybody does, and gone, will it serve me better to recognize and honor and fess up to the true side of that story, or continue the fabricated story? Have you ever had a scenario like that, Sonia?
I don't think I have one like that I can think of, but in terms
so holier than thou, you're all true.
But I was thinking just now, literally, about the bit where she was saying, like, you can't like lie on your deathbed and just wonder what life you could have had for yourself and your family and the relationships if you hadn't like jumped out of the cage and been braver. Yeah. And so obviously, and then I feel like if anyone was having like, they were like, as most people are taught to, you know, like to hide their sexuality, obviously for you guys are like brave and we live in London where you can be free. I feel like that would help a lot of people to see that it's okay.
But even on sexuality related, I mean, we're all meandering through our life story, and there's been moments when we like she just wanted to be accepted in the cool crowd, and she just fudged a little vote so she could be that person. I mean, I can't even remember. I've done stuff like that. I can't remember the carte blanche verbatim, you know, mirroring story, but even the honesty that she gives, it makes you think, oh God, should I be more honest? Because like, there's the art of being untamed and the art of being wild, being truly honest, brutally honest, not only to the people around you, but to yourself. Or do we, as especially gay men, and you know, we're like, oh God, we've got to protect ourselves, we've got to protect the people around us. We can't admit because we've got to keep the guilt and shame going on. Very similar mirroring to Glennon's story. What do you think about that?
I really wanted to ask, earlier on you said, I'm going back about 2 minutes here, you said you paint a different picture of your history and your past, and I completely identify with this because I think sometimes we look back on our lives and we edit and we tweak and we make some things more glamorous and we try to forget about a few things. But after you've done that for a story a certain amount of times, and this is a question for everybody, how do you go about remembering the truth of your past and getting through the image that you might have created for sometimes a long period of time?
Very good question. Would you like to answer that, Neo?
It's quite a weird one, so.
I think it depends to the degree to which you're aware that you've been lying, really. Because if someone is like really, really covering up something deep, then perhaps it is really hard. But I can't imagine you doing that, Rizzy. I think to lose track of what's real, someone has to be like a pathological liar, I would imagine. I think how do we have the courage to admit to something we've lied about is obviously tricky for people, but to know what's real, I think you'd have to have done a hell of a lot of lying to not know. I can't imagine, is that something that you've...
So personally, things in my childhood, I think, after, like when I was fairly young, I tried to change it quite quickly, and I did that when I was young. And I feel like I've reached a point in my life now where I'm very aware of the fact that the way I'm remembering it isn't necessarily the way it happened. And I think that something happened there that needs healing. But I can't seem to find the truth within that. And there have been scenarios where I have found the truth, but there have been some where I really struggled to find what the story was before I decided to change it.
I think it's very interesting because they say that eyewitness testimony in court is actually the least reliable evidence, even though it seems to be the most intense. So there is that side. I remember doing like Byron Katie's work and doing one of her workshops, and it's very interesting that the stories we tell ourselves, and this isn't to kind of make ourselves, we're not actively lying to try and present something. This is what we've tried to make true in our own heads. So I think when you put on top of that a lie that people came to believe, that in order to be convincing, we kind of acted it out.
Yeah.
Like you say, I think it can get really messy. And I think she's really good in that by not only recognizing how important it is to be truthful, like literally truthful, but to be truthful with oneself rather than masking it behind the idea of either victim or tyrant or whatever it is. One of the things I really love in this book is her relationship with sobriety, because she's talked openly about addiction, but she explicitly links wildness to sobriety, which I love, because I think that so many people look at sobriety as being tamed, when she actually says not being sober is the hiding place of our fear, is where we go to not be wild, to not be free, because it's a way of hiding from that. So she said for so many years that sense of being the caged cheetah, she drank instead. And it meant she didn't have to uncage herself and feel all the pain of what it meant to be human and what it meant to have disappointment and loss and regret and joy and ecstasy and everything. So rather than risk being wild, she drank instead. And for me, it's very refreshing to hear people talking. And that's my favorite takeaway from the book. I've only read the first half of the book, just a little over a half. But that's one of the things that I think is really radical about this book. It's all very well to simply just spit in the face of conservative mediocrity and say, yeah, we're wild, the kids are wild, we don't want to be held down. She's not saying that. She's saying, you've got to go to the place that's really terrifying, which is your truth. And if you are numbing yourself, whether it be through, in her case, drugs, alcohol, and bulimia, but she says also self-righteousness or identities that have been based upon successful commercial and career paths. She says you've got to strip all of that back. And it's just refreshing to read someone who is sober in the biggest, because I've been really interested in the concept of sobriety as not only being an absence of intoxication, but this radical fearlessness. Because there's so many ways that we can make ourselves drunk or not sober that have nothing to do with substance. I mean, obviously substance does that, but there's so many ways we can fool ourselves into not actually showing up in our vulnerability. And so I get the sense that the book is picking up steam in that way. And that's, for me, is something I'm very excited by, because I'm very excited by what sobriety makes available at the level of wildness.
Wow.
Amazing. And it's so interesting. That's why I feel this book is so zeitgeist. It's so now. It's commenting on what everybody's feeling right now, because, you know, we're all currently caged, you know, physically and metaphorically. And, you know, people are double caging by turning to alcohol and, you know, almost caging themselves with their emotions. And it's kind of almost, you know, she's been highlighting where society has been going. Because when was it actually written? I mean, it was published a few years ago, wasn't it?
No, it's this year, I think.
This year.
Let's have a look.
I mean, it's so of the now. And you know,
2020.
Like you say, you know, the whole, you know, you swap one thing from another, and people think that you're wild if you're like, you know, out crazy partying and taking the drugs and the alcohol and being like the hedonistic crazy one. But of course, as you say, Stephen, they're not at all wild. They're just numbing down the anxieties of being a wild human in tune with themselves. What do you think, Sonia?
She's actually got another book that you might have been thinking of, which is called Love Warrior. And I was thinking, in terms of the numbing and the pain, I really like how she helps you to get a different perspective on the pain. And I wrote down some notes. It said that, like, you just have to become like curious and trust the pain and not try to numb it and use it as a lesson. And it says that the pain is magic, not tragic.
Aww.
And there is no glory except through your story.
Oh,
I like that.
Do you know, I love, Sonia, how that you said that, all with your beautiful tranquil zone, with your candle in the background. You got your beautiful skylight.
I'm also multitasking because I'm a woman and doing my nails.
Oh, amazing. Well, listen, guys. Well, that leads us to the sort of the wrap up of discussing that particular book. Now, please, if it's resonated with you, please do grab the book, whether it be audio or get the paperback. It really is an inspirational read, and especially in this time when we want to identify with people that are the same but different but the same. So, and just to sort of finally wrap up tonight, if you want to just add in my beautiful guests, Rizzy, Neo, and Sonia, if you want to add in any books that, you know, might be similar, or that similar theme where they're kind of inspirational but sometimes a book where it's really non-spiritual, that's really really real, but just gives you those reminders that we have to do what we need to do to be on this planet right now to thrive and survive.
There is this book, and it's called Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. I don't know if any of you have read it. It has also got a very strong female author, and it's not necessarily spiritual. I mean, when you read the book, it definitely has spiritual undertones and spiritual lessons within it. But she goes throughout her life, and it's very anecdotal, and she speaks about different periods of her life when she learns different things. And the general direction of the book is about creative living without fear. And I've found in my life, and she says in the book as well, how throughout society we've been told to believe that to create good art, it has to be a battle, when really creating art, it's not a battle, it's a dance. And the only reason these books correlate in my mind is because they both are written by strong female women, and they both are quite anecdotal, and she doesn't take the spiritual aspect of it too seriously, but she teaches you certain lessons through her own stories.
They're actually friends, the two authors.
Are they really?
Talks about her in the book. It's really interesting.
What chapter? What chapter?
You just start from the beginning, babes.
I've read the blurb. Good.
Oh, thank you so much for that, Rizzy, that great recommendation. We'll put all of our recommendations on the blurb below. Sonia, what book would you like to recommend?
The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz.
Oh.
Very.
And how did that particular book help you on your current journey?
It's something called Toltec wisdom, and also the same author's written another book about the mastery of love that somebody I met in Barcelona recommended to me, so I need to read that one too. But the Four Agreements, the 4 lessons in that are very simple yet profound.
Thank you so much, Sonia, for joining us. And Neo, what book have you got to recommend for our beautiful viewers?
I am loving the Gene Keys at the moment. Very, very, very much.
So the Gene Keys being like a whole like healing modality, analogy, insight, intel. Is there a particular book on it?
How do you spell it?
Gene, Gene,
Is there like one book on it?
Well, the Gene Keys is a book.
Oh, right.
But I just think it's just a brilliant technology, if you like, really deep wisdom. Richard Rudd is brilliant. And there's a big community out there. If you go to the genekeys.com or genekeys.com, you get this, and put your birthday in and everything, you get this free profile, and then you can see which are your gene keys. And then you read this beautiful text, and there's a lot of ways of working with it. There's an online course you can use for all of that. But I just think it's been probably one of the most transformative texts I've ever come across. And there's lots of great, I mean, I'm like Rizzy, I read lots of books at the same time. And so I like also, I'm listening to a lot of Audible books as well. I find that I do quite a lot of driving. And so I really enjoy that. So there's quite a few. There's a really lovely book by David White called Wild Mind, Wild Heart, where he talks about poetry. He uses he's a poet himself, but he uses other people's poetry to illustrate very grounded, earthy, spiritual wisdom. And that's, I think, one of my go-to audiobooks I like to listen to again and again. But he's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But the Gene Keys is something I'm really excited by at the moment, like really excited by.
I've got another recommendation.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, I just accidentally muted you. Unmute. Unmute. Sorry, unmute.
I've got another recommendation. This is like my go-to book to buy someone for a present, and it's called Inward by Young Pablo, YUNGPUEBLO. He has an Instagram page too, and it's just very short little poetry or just little paragraphs that are very, again, I like the simple yet profound. And it also comes in Spanish too, and I bought it for Spanish friends and they also love it. It's a really good book.
I've been learning Spanish.
But it's called Inward.
Amazing.
I've been reading an amazing book.
Thank you so much for joining us this week. We looked at the beautiful, amazing, inspirational Untamed by Glennon Doyle. And yeah, it's such a good book. I would recommend it to anybody, wherever you're at. It's real easy, read or listen, depending on how you're approaching it. Very inspirational. And she is a remarkable woman and really makes me want to be more me be more truthful, and me be more wild. So if you want to step into the wild side, join in and read the book. And all of the recommendations from Rizzy and Neo and beautiful Sonia. I really appreciate the tribe that came together tonight for book club. It was our first one. It was very cute and very perfectly formed. Nothing happens by accident. It was absolutely perfect. We will be here next month, and we will be announcing next week the book in question. I mean, unless, guys, do you want to declare the book tonight? I wanted it to be the Joe Dispenza, Becoming Supernatural.
Really?
It's a big read, though, so maybe something a little bit more celebratory. Our next month program will all be about celebration. The autumn November program for Wonderment Online is all about autumn rising. So it's about increasing our vibrations and keeping, very high in this very dense situation that we're all going through, and keeping vibrating highly. So we will be declaring next month. Please, if you're seeing this in the next few days, remember that we are here on Sunday for the amazing Jill Watson's beautiful, amazing yoga live from Wasing Woods amongst the beautiful autumnal trees. Please keep tuning in. Look at our program for all of the above, and anything that you missed, don't worry, because it will be down here all recorded for you to enjoy at any time, including our Monday morning meditations. So thank you for joining. One more thank you from Rizzy and Neo. And of course, our beautiful Sonia. Thank you. I am Chris Fitchie. This is Wonderment. Thank you and good night.